City hit by challenging weather conditions earlier today. Government hopes to reduce cross-harbour tunnel traffic by 10% with new plan. US Congress Speaker claims there will be bipartisan agreement to tackle TikTok. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. Stormy weather pounded Hong Kong throughout the afternoon. The observatory issued the amber rainstorm warning signal and twice the hail warnings. Rainwater flooded parts of Tuen Mun Hospital, with some patients having to be transferred to neighbouring hospitals. Jackie Lin reports.
Clouds gathered over the city today and enveloped the skyline of Victoria Harbour. As heavy downpours lashed the city, at 12:20 p.m., the Hong Kong Observatory issued the amber rainstorm warning signal. Within 10 minutes, another hail warning. The forecaster lifted the initial hail warning at around 2 before a second at 5:30. While the warning was off at around 3 p.m., a Saiwan Ho resident captured what could be Hong Kong's first hail since 2021.
I heard the hail storm hitting the window, and I recorded a very quick video to keep a trace of that. Not very long, like 1 to 2 minutes maximum. And then I just called my kids to show them, and by the time they came, it was already over. It was like low quality hail, not like very icy, strong hail, but definitely hail.
The observatory says they received reports of hail from residents in the district and are analyzing them. While the amber rainstorm signal was enforced for 3 hours, there were also reports of blocked drains in Tuen Mun bus terminus. Rainwater inundated parts of the emergency ward of Tuen Mun Hospital. Some patients had to be transferred to Pok Oi, Tin Shui Wai, and Yan Chai hospitals. Reportedly, the flooding was caused by drainage issues at a construction site outside. The A&E service there resumed at around 4 after emergency repairs. Around noon, Tuen Mun and Yuen Long logged some 50 millimeters of rainfall, while around 40 millimeters of precipitation were recorded around Kowloon. The observatory said the warm and humid airstream around the South China Sea that is moving northward met the cold air mass moving south, so hailstones could have been formed. Former Assistant Director of the Observatory, Leung Wing Mo, says it's very hard to accurately predict hailstorms. For the next few days, the forecaster says the city will still be affected by strong winds with patchy rain. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
Earlier this week, the government proposed a plan to redistribute traffic in the 3 cross-harbour tunnels. Secretary for Transport and Logistics Lam Sai-hung said today he hopes to reduce the traffic by 10% with the implementation of a time-varying toll plan. Veronica Lin has the story.
Starting on August 2nd, private cars using the Western Tunnel will be charged $60 and cross-harbour and Eastern Tunnels $30. Later this year, when the time-varying toll plan is introduced, fares for cross-harbour and Eastern Tunnels will be increased to $40 during peak hours. During off-peak hours, private cars will be charged $30 during the daytime for all 3 tunnels and $20 at night.
因為非繁忙時間嗰個票價咧。
Secretary for Transport and Logistics Lam Sai-hung says drivers will have more incentive to use the tunnels during off-peak hours, as the fares are lower. Last year, during morning peak hours, traffic exceeded the capacity of the tunnels by 26%. Lam expects to reduce traffic by 10%, adding it would not lead to congestion in all 3 tunnels at the same time.
我哋期望可以減到10% 嘅。
Lam believes at least 1 tunnel will be much less congested than it is now. Asked if a 4th tunnel will be necessary, Lam says the artificial islands in Khao Yu Chau near Nantou Island will be connected to new territories by a bridge and tunnel.
西北嗰邊，即係因為而家我哋有好多嘅人口啦，甚至
He suggests it might be possible to bypass Kowloon and reach Hong Kong Island directly. As for plans to limit private car growth, Lam Sai-hung says registrations for private cars have decreased since the increase of registration taxes and license fees, but he adds the government will consider various options. Veronica Lin, TVB News.
International experience is important for talent in the hotel industry as Hong Kong serves visitors from around the world. A hotel chain has launched a pilot scheme to support vocational training students majoring in hospitality to go overseas for internships.
Vocational Training Council, or VTC, mainly provides on-the-job training for students who don't receive tertiary education in the city. An overseas internship can be a rare opportunity for their students. Under a pilot scheme launched by Rosewood Hotel Group, 9 VTC students studying hospitality will intern in hotels in the Middle East, Europe and on the mainland. And there's more to it than just letting them broaden their horizons.
We know that not all young people can go to university. Many bright, promising young people will go to Vocational Training Council in Hong Kong. And we want to enable them and empower them to build careers that are as rewarding as anyone who has gone to university.
Venus and Henry are 2 of the chosen VTC students who will be setting off for their overseas internship as early as July. Henry explains why he chose Abu Dhabi for his internship.
For example, we cannot touch their head, or we have to know them they cannot eat pig. Sometimes they have their own schedule, they have to worship a specific time in a day, and I'm not familiar with those. When I have this experience, then I will avoid so I won't offend them.
Venus, meanwhile, chose Beijing as she believes she will be able to learn from the strict standards at hotels in the country's capital. Meanwhile, the hotel group is confident that there's no such thing as a talent drain in the industry, or Hong Kong even, as the pandemic has given mankind a great lesson.
A talent shortage is not just limited to Hong Kong or to hospitality. It's a pandemic-induced shortage where people are taking a breath and they're thinking about what they want from their lives. One of the great findings of the pandemic has been that people want connection. Hospitality is all about connection. Building a career in hospitality actually delivers on many of the desires that the pandemic has unearthed that people have.
The group noted that there's no timeline yet on how long the initiative will keep running, adding it will review the program to consider extending it to other disciplines.
U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has claimed lawmakers will pass bipartisan legislation to address national security worries about short video app TikTok. Meanwhile, influencers are concerned about the business potential they will lose out on if TikTok is banned in the U.S. Tracy Furness reports.
TikTok collects nearly every data point imaginable, from people's location to what they type and copy.
We do not promote or remove content at the request of the Chinese government.
The debate raged Thursday for 5 hours as the U.S. government ponders whether to ban the social media app TikTok due to security concerns for the 150 million Americans who use the app. However, American users were also speaking out, concerned their businesses will suffer if there is a ban.
The conversation I'm seeing now on TikTok is the concern that I really feel, which is I am a business owner and we have 2.3 million followers on TikTok. It is by far our biggest audience. And if TikTok were to be banned, that would mean severe repercussions for me and literally thousands and thousands of United States-based businesses that employ United States citizens.
A nationwide ban on TikTok, I think, would be a mistake. It's such an important space for free expression, access to information, but that doesn't mean we can't take action to reduce that risk. So instead of a ban, the app should be treated in a more comprehensive approach that treats TikTok as part of a wider ecosystem of social media companies that need urgent attention. So Congress could pass a really robust privacy law and bolster requirements for companies to be more transparent about their operations and practices.
The Senate Commerce Committee has not yet scheduled a hearing to consider a Restrict Act bill that has 20 Senate co-sponsors, which will allow a ban on foreign technology that poses a national security risk. The earliest date would be mid-April when the Senate returns from recess. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Apple CEO Tim Cook is in Beijing to attend the China Development Forum. In the corporate summit, Cook praised the country for its rapid innovation and its long ties with the U.S. iPhone maker. During his speech, Tim Cook said innovation is developing rapidly in China and he believes it will further accelerate. Cook also discussed education and the need for young people to learn programming and critical thinking skills as he announced that Apple plans to increase spending on its rural education program to 100 million yuan. Cook also visited an Apple store in Beijing on Friday. His visit comes at a time when Apple has been looking to reduce its supply chain reliance on China and moving production to countries such as India. Besides Cook, the event is attended by senior government officials and CEOs of firms such as Pfizer. U.S. President Joe Biden Friday said the United States is prepared to act forcefully to protect Americans. This after the U.S. military carried out airstrikes against Iran-backed forces in retaliation for an attack in Syria that killed an American contractor and wounded 5 troops.
One of our citizens tragically died in that attack. And on the flight up yesterday, I spoke to our national security team and ordered an immediate response.
The Pentagon said American forces retaliated with precision airstrikes in Syria, targeting facilities used by groups affiliated with Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Activists say the hits killed at least 4 people. The exchange threatens to upend recent efforts to de-escalate tensions across the Middle East. Still ahead on tonight's news. France faces more protests after Britain's King Charles cancels visit. European leaders will travel to China to seek peace in Ukraine. Welcome back. France is preparing for more pension protests this weekend. Violent scenes have caused King Charles to pull out of a state visit scheduled for next week as more industrial action and disruption were planned to coincide with his trip. Emmanuel Macron's government requests the postponement. David Garrett has more.
Now is perhaps not the best time to visit Paris. Garbage litters the streets. After industrial action, some have been set on fire during several nights of protests. The new British monarch will not travel to Paris for the time being. Britain's King Charles III was also due to visit Bordeaux next week, but angry demonstrators set fire to the town hall in scenes that shocked France. Emmanuel Macron's government asked Buckingham Palace to call it off. This is Macron and the then Prince Charles before the death of his mother in happier times for France, almost 3 years ago when the French president was in London. As the pension reform storm has engulfed Macron's government, Macron said a state visit at this time would lack common sense. There have been at least 10 days of widespread disruption, with more planned to coincide with the King's trip. Macron said he telephoned the King and said friendship led us to a postponement.
It should be a celebration, should be a moment to be happy about the state of affairs. And really, with the situation in France as it is, it just wasn't possible. So although I'm sure it was a hard decision for the French to take, it's the right decision.
It is embarrassing for Macron. These people in Paris were disappointed.
Striking and things, it's pretty big in French culture, so especially in Paris, so you know, it'd be good if he came and he saw what it was actually like. Maybe he could have a say in making a difference or something like that.
C'est pas la joie, donc This man says, listen, it's not a joyous time. He's right not to come. There are protests everywhere.
I don't think he's afraid. I mean, he should not be. But yeah, for sure, it's maybe too much for him to come right now. It might scare him a little.
The French president has matters closer to home to worry about. Thursday saw millions on the streets across the country as he raises the pension age to 64. Protests turned fiery and violent. At a summit in Brussels, Macron addressed the anger that is raging out of control.
Nous ne céderons rien à cette violence.
He said, we will not give in to violence. We will not give in to violence, and I condemn it. For now, the closest Parisians can get to seeing British royalty in their city is this waxwork of King Charles, which was unveiled on the day the trip was postponed. His Majesty and Camilla, the Queen Consort, will still visit Germany next week as the UK reaches out to European nations following Brexit. David Garrett, TVB News.
A number of European leaders are set to visit China soon. That follows President Xi Jinping's trip to Moscow after Beijing proposed a peacemaking deal on the war in Ukraine. Tracy Furness reports.
President Xi Jinping recently concluded a 3-day visit to Moscow, where Russian leader Vladimir Putin said China's proposal could be used as the basis of a peace settlement in Ukraine. And a number of EU leaders and officials will soon visit China. They plan to tap China's peacemaking role to end Russia's war with Ukraine. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez will visit China next week. Sánchez will take part in the Bayo Forum for Asia in the southern province of Hainan on Thursday. The forum is an event similar to the World Economic Forum held in Davos. The following day, Sánchez is expected to meet with President Xi in Beijing. Madrid said China has a key role to play as a mediator in the Ukraine war. In early April, French President Emmanuel Macron and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen will travel to China together. The French president said the goal is to engage with China to put pressure on Russia. Meanwhile, Josep Borrell, the EU's foreign policy chief, is also planning a trip to China. Borrell said China has not formed a military alliance with Moscow and has not supplied arms to help Russia in its war in Ukraine. China has not crossed any red lines for us, he said. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Locally, though Hong Kong is aspiring to be an innovation and technology hub, finding the right talent is often a challenge. Some tech startups have found the right talent at a job fair in Cyberport. Sakura Ip was at the fair.
3D printing is now taught in some primary and secondary schools after the government started promoting STEM education in 2015. But this Cyberport startup, which manufactures 3D printers for educational use, has been struggling to find talent as it scales up its business.
We are looking for someone to have the 3D modeling skills, and also we are a tech company, so we would like to have someone who has an educational background. So we have searching for these talents for around 1 year. There is not enough talents with 3D modeling or 3D printing. So at the moment, it is a bit difficult for us to scale up the business by hiring enough employees.
Peggy said the company could hire the right person for a year. Until recently, it hired an intern via a jockey club traineeship program. Billy is a Hong Kong student who studies engineering in Taiwan. Peggy is not alone in facing difficulties finding talent in the sector. The Cyberport Career Fair this year offered over 1,500 positions from around 150 enterprise tech companies and startups across various industries such as fintech, artificial intelligence and blockchain.
Apart from tech talents, some tech startups are also looking for business developers to promote the product developed during the pandemic.
During the period of the pandemic, we have successfully developed our product already, and we need to have a better marketing in a more physical environment. We need to have a business developer.
As the society is back to normal, companies need more manpower to work on in-person events offline. Sakura Ip, TVB News.
The Hong Kong Tourism Board says the number of mainland visitors have returned to 45% of pre-pandemic levels. However, Hong Kong's capacity to receive visitors is still insufficient. Executive Director of the Tourism Board, Dane Cheng, says many tourists from Thailand, the Philippines and Southeast Asia countries have visited the city and that mainland visitors reached 100,000 per day last weekend. Cheng adds, whilst Hong Kong is mainland tourists' top choice during the Labor Day Golden Week, more help needs to be put in place due to manpower shortages in various sectors, such as hotels. And that's the news for tonight. Thank you for joining us.